Good afternoon, everybody. Call to order the meeting, weekly meeting, Commissioners Finance meeting today, March 23rd, hour 1:30 p.m. Have arrived. We'll begin with a period of public comment for any members here.
There's nobody online.
There's nobody online. There's nobody here offering anything that isn't on the agenda, so we will move on to item 3, which is the minutes of our meeting of March 16. And I'll entertain a motion for action on this.
Move to approve the minutes, March 16th, 2022.
Give a second. Is Jean not on?
Yes, Jean is on. She's on.
She's not. Okay. All right. So I will second that. All in favor, indicate by saying.
She's here.
I'm sorry.
She is on.
Oh, she's okay.
Okay.
All right. Well, I second now, but now we know that she's here. So, okay. All in favor, indicate by saying aye.
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 There we go.
Okay. Very good. Motion carries unanimously. All right, we'll move on to item 4. We have 2 topics of discussion today. The first one being our update from Housing and Redevelopment Authority. So we'll turn this over to our guests today. And I guess Mary's taking the lead on it for now.
Okay. You should have a presentation with you.
It should be up. Okay. You can use that clicker.
Okay, thank you.
Size.
All right, so I promise this is long, but the next ones will be shorter. So this is the big intro for everybody. So, all right, so the Housing and Redevelopment Authorities in the county were established in 1975. Essentially, they are 2 different authorities. They are 2 different authorities governed by 2 different laws. The Housing Authority owns most of the property for public housing and public senior. The Redevelopment Authority owns the people. So that's the best way to describe it. There you go. So this is the Cumberland County Housing Redevelopment Authorities. We are actually, now that I've counted out, a group of 75 individuals. So that is our whole organizational chart. We have full property management division. We have a facilities management division, human resources, community development, housing choice vouchers, and of course our finance office. So we are probably one of the biggest, most unknown agencies in the county. This is an overview of the housing choice voucher program, what you would think of as Section 8. So we manage it for here and Perry counties. HUD allocates about 1,300 vouchers between the 2 counties, the majority here in Cumberland. And right now we have 1,199 individuals leased up. So we have about 500 plus landlords participating in the county. However, we do need to grow that number. As you can see, the waiting list has increased. We have 2,608 families on that waiting list right now. We keep doing polls. The difficulty has been finding landlords who would like to participate. Some things I'll bring to your attention also, because these are a lot of questions you might get asked, we get asked. Basically, once a person is selected to given a voucher, they have 60 days to find a unit. That has been very challenging with the pandemic. So they have 2 additional extensions, 2 30-day extensions to go and find a unit. Preferences. So this has become a really interesting conversation. Our preferences here in Cumberland are if you're a single parent with a child under 6, if you're elderly or disabled, you're a working family, you receive a preference which moves you up the list. Children and youth, domestic violence, people with MHIDD issues, homeless and special needs programs, those individuals will again get a preference up the list. One thing I will note here is refugee status is not in Cumberland County nor in Perry County a preference. There seems to be a bit of confusion. It is not a preference. We do not move people onto the list or kick people off based on that. We also did pursue this year 5 VASH vouchers, which are veteran vouchers. So essentially we are given, and we filled those up immediately. So there are veterans here in the county who really do need housing. And so we have 5 of those vouchers. If we continue to do well, leasing those up, the county will receive more. We also work with children and youth here in the county with a foster youth to independence voucher. That basically takes someone who is 18, they're getting ready to get out of foster, and we will get them a voucher at a recommendation. And so that can get them into an apartment so they can start building their future.
Quick question, go back. The, two questions.
Mhm.
So the preferences, those are set at what, the county level?
County level.
Each, or your footprint, Cumberland.
They're set at the county level. So in Cumberland, they're set at Cumberland's level.
So are those pre-existing categories that you pick off of a menu? Or?
It's sort of a mix of both. So there are a number of preferences allowed through HUD, and the county is given the option of picking the ones they feel best they want to pursue.
So your board makes that decision?
So actually, no, you'll see that annual plan that comes through with Becky. We put out public comment. We have a bunch of our tenants and our clients get on a sort of a panel, give some recommendations.
Oh, okay.
So there's open to public comment for that.
One other question, you mentioned about the landlord number, and you
Yes.
mentioned you need to grow that number. So we've been hearing that from other fronts that there's a shortage of that. So is that number declining, or is it just not growing as
It's
fast?
just not growing as fast as we need it to. What we're starting to see is landlords selling their property and getting out. So
Right.
a number have been retiring, and so the newer landlords who are coming in are raising rents to a place that we can't essentially cover. So individual can only pay 30% of their income when it comes to Section 8. So if the rent is far too high, then they're not eligible.
Okay.
For that unit. So right now we do have a landlord incentive program going on where we will give a new landlord who wants to accept Section 8 vouchers $1,000. So that has spurred some interest, and we're getting more landlords who are interested in participating. And I stress really with landlords, we don't do anything. We don't take control over your property. We don't govern it. We simply do an inspection that says the health and safety. So running water, electricity, the basics of safety. This is the Emergency Rental Assistance Program. So right now we've assisted approximately a little over 1,050 families. We've had about 1,800 applications have been received. And so far, we are going to actually stop accepting new applications as of April 1st. We will, because we've obligated so much funding already to individuals who have received funding. They're eligible to up to 18 months of assistance. So when you start looking at the people who are currently on the program and who are still eligible, we don't want to put ourselves in a position where they will no longer be able to receive assistance. So now it's a matter of looking at what we have, what we spent, and what we're obligated to these families already. So as of April 1, we won't be accepting any new applications. And that's in line with many other counties at this point. The whole program was designed to help people through the pandemic who were affected by COVID-19 or who were impacted by the pandemic. What we're finding is we're starting to get out of that area, and statewide they're finding there's significant amount of fraud occurring. So we felt best that we should contain funding those individuals who have already applied and are in continued need of assistance. We have a homeless and special needs area. So we do manage the county's coordinated entry list. So as of March 16th, there were 240 households on that list. That's about 403 individuals who are considered homeless here in Cumberland County. And at the same time last year, there was 145 households. So it's clearly there's something that is very much shifted, but that was also challenging to report with COVID. So we have two programs here that our office administers. One is a rapid rehousing program that can house about 30 people, put you there for about 6 months to get on your feet. We have a permanent housing program that's about 39 individuals who are chronically homeless with a disability. So they are in permanent housing. And then we're working with the, MHIDD to house individuals coming out of their programs. So our case managers work with them to get them a voucher and get them through Section 8 so that they can move along. Property management, we have 149 units of public housing. There's about over 1,000 people on that waiting list at the moment. We have 59 units of public senior housing, and they have about 259 people in total on their waiting lists. This is a family self-sufficiency program we run for public housing. I'm looking to grow this program, and we have some really great staff now who are invested in it. Family self-sufficiency is we put some money into a fund. Basically, you pay your rent, money goes into a fund to help you build up some equity so that you can move out of public housing and transition onto your feet. So we're going to grow that program and work with a lot of the other nonprofits in the county to help expand. For our federal senior properties, we have 2 here in the county, one West Penn, which is the large building you here see in Carlisle. That's 130 units, and we have 0 vacancies. That is all senior housing. Mountain View in Newville, that's 20 units. We have 4 vacancies, but we're processing those pretty quickly. We also manage 13 tax credit properties throughout Cumberland and Perry County. 9 are designated for people who are 62 plus. 2 are particularly for individuals and families. 2 are dedicated for people with MH or MR individuals, and we provide supportive services for 13 properties throughout both counties. Supportive services are required for some tax credit properties, and some of our nonprofit boards decided they want to continue that. It's a person on staff who creates events and makes sure that if anyone is having an issue, they can help assist them to get to services. In addition to that, we manage homeowner programs here in the county, so we are not just about rentals. So we have a first-time homebuyer program that comes through the county's Affordable Housing Trust Fund. We had in 2021 161 participants. Now through March, we're up to 51. And we provided in 2021 at least $119,000 of down payment assistance. This program is incredibly popular. So we do find that we max out and cap out at the amount of individuals we can put through it. We also just got into housing counseling. So we have a full-time housing counselor. Right now, she started in July, she started counseling. She counseled 16 individuals, and then in 2022, she's up to 10. So there is a demand for that. Carlisle Borough and the county both have home rehab programs. This comes out of your community development block grant funds. And at this point, what we will do is we will provide up to, for the borough, it's $20,000 per project. For the county, it's $17,500. We will rehab someone's home, a qualified home buyer, so somebody under 80% of the median income. So you think a lot about senior citizens who may be cited for a gutter repair or anything like that. We can come in and assist. But we were able to assist 3 and 3 again. We have waiting lists for all of these, and as we receive funding, basically we can improve and add more people, but funding is pretty tight on these programs, and that's just because of what you're able to allocate based on HUD's requirements. And again, we have an emergency rehab program for the county that is $5,000 per project, and again 4 and 4, and we have 3 currently in progress. That is something that we see a lot in the winter. If your furnace goes down, the county will come in and assist you to rehab your property. And this is just some highlights. You all know the CDBG program. So the county fluctuates, but it's about $1.2 million annually that the county receives. 2022 applications are currently open. So Chris Rafferty and his division will be going through those. But some highlights. Over the years, it's funded shelter operations over at Safe Harbor, after school programming with the YMCA, so the Cumberland Small Business Fund at Kadick, Dykeman Parks, walking bridge replacement, basketball court rehab. Basically, communities come and say what they need, apply for what they need, and then bring them to you as the commissioners to see what would make a good project. So we look at the eligibility, fundability, and then make some recommendations. The home program, the county gets about 500,000. I'd love to see this number go up. And I think with current legislation, then increases to HUD's budget, you're going to see a larger allocation at some point. But home is the program that allows us to develop affordable housing and first-time home buyer housing in the county. But annually, it's been about $500,000. And now I will turn it over to Rebecca. These are highlights of some of Rebecca's work, but I can let her get into some of the details if you'd like.
Name names.
Yeah, name names. Go for it.
How's that? Right. Thought it would be helpful just to tell you a little bit about some of the trends we're seeing into the first quarter. They all bode really well for Cumberland County. I will say that. We continue to see new, well-conceived, new ventures do well, they do really well. They've historically done really well. And those are ones that want to expand, purchase property, add services, add amenities, get a new location. Some opened in 2019, some opened in the midst of the pandemic. We had a really robust year in 2020. Glitz Soap, for example, opened in 2020. Family bought a building a few doors down. They're opening a second location on North Hanover Street in 2 weeks. Chambersburg's Falafel Shack was here Monday, visited a lot of properties. They want a second location here in downtown Carlisle. Businesses never leave our portfolio. We're with them before they even have a concept, just want to open a business. And well after they've opened, as they do new things. Some are new starts. Many of them are already bursting at the seams. They're looking to buy or build downtown or even beyond. And that's been a change in our programming in the last year. We're not strictly focused on the downtowns. Davis Country Living, Agway, is a good example. They are building in Monroe Township on West Trindle Road. Well, that leaves one of the buildings that they lease available. We have a wonderful community asset in a nonprofit that has that building, the lawn and garden building, under contract, as they too need more space. They have growing pains. Molly Pitcher Brewing will graduate to own a location in Carlisle, and we have over $1 million pledged from 3 different lenders for Smoke and Pickles Artisan Butcher Shop to buy a property, because who doesn't want more of that, right? Everybody wants that. Our projects often take root in declining properties, long vacant buildings, and we turn them into welcoming places that are in high traffic areas. We have blocks in our communities that in no way resemble what they did even 5 years ago, and we want to continue that trend. These coming projects not only transform the building and the block, but they also add sadly needed commercial space. So I don't have an awful lot to show in many of my communities, an awful lot of things that are available or will be available. So that's very important. What's hot? Food and drink continues to be very hot. Retail is a little softer, although it's coming back. We've opened some shops even in the first quarter. Camp Hill's Birch and Iris is a good example of that. What's not hot? Letting your property go. Because our programs are the good kind of contagious, and we see increasingly the great examples of how we've turned things around, put friendly pressure on those who haven't gotten with the program yet. And many of those properties are now for sale. We're able to get them into new and trusted hands. The Cumberland Street View Facade Grant is a wonderful tool. We've paired it with local programs. You will see within the next month a project on West Main Street in Mechanicsburg, a building that's seen better days, that houses Chef de Crepe business, fantastic longstanding business, and 2 other commercial entities, plus 16 residential properties, their residential units. We're going to be painting that 3 or 4 colors. That sounds like a lot, but the storefronts will be separated out, so they'll look a little different. And that couldn't come soon enough, painting that building. That's across from where the freshly baked gingerbread man is located, will be located. We've piqued the interest of regionals and baby nationals. These are stores that are locally owned, like 3 Dog Bakery, which will open in Silver Spring Square in a couple months. That's dog food, baked goods for dogs that they bake on site, but also have products that are brought in, clothing and accessories for dogs. Pliable, right here on North Hanover Street, that's a national chain. The 3 Dog Bakery, by the way, will open in Silver Spring. It's owned by a couple from Shippensburg who've been looking for quite a while. And the Good Feet store, which will open in Lower Allen by Trader Joe's. We're working with 2 businesses that are for sale. One is retail, one is not, but we're going to work with them to ensure that ongoing success under the new owners. So business is brisk. That's not new. Through the pandemic, I'm very proud to say that we have kept our offices open 24/7. that all of our services have continued without any suspension or reduction, everything being fully available as it always has been. This first quarter, we've seen a lot of great news, television, radio stories about the businesses, about the expansions, and also about our services, because a lot of the things that we do are modeled by communities well beyond Cumberland County. So that's not news, but it sure is helpful to know, and we appreciate your ongoing support for all that we do.
You're Rebecca.
Thank you. You're welcome.
All right, I'll hop over to the county's blighted property reinvestment board. So the reinvestment board, when I came on in November 2020, I took a look at the policies and procedures, and we had a few extra steps as a county that weren't required by law. So I took those out just to be able to expedite. So right now there are 5 properties in the queue. Actually, we had some great feedback. 2 of those properties that started in the process are actually in the process of being cleaned up by the owners themselves. A third, the owner has reached out with the township to see what they can do, and they're interested in trying to improve the property. This one, 420 Bossler Ave, is going to officially go before the Redevelopment Authority Board because it has gone through the full process. So we will be going after it to potentially do eminent domain, which the town of Lemoyne Borough is very interested in. It has been blighted for a significant amount of time and has become quite the hazard. The county also has a demolition fund. This is Act 152. So I designed the application and policy. We have 3 applications currently being completed by different landowners throughout the county. So we go from Lower Allen to Boiling Springs, all the way into Silver Springs. So they're working on some of those applications, and we'll be getting those soon. Priority is given to municipal applicants. So if the municipality does show up with a project, an emergency demo, this one in particular, I told Lemoyne, if it falls down in the street, you know, reach out as soon as you can and we'll fund you to demolish it. That's an emergency demolition. So there is right now well over $400,000 in that fund, and that is just because of the sale of property has increased dramatically. So I'm looking to push that application out more, and I think word of mouth is spreading now that people are starting to pick up some blighted properties. This demo fund, I did not attach to the blight process, you know, as a way to expedite it. So really what any person has to do with a blighted property, or essentially looking at the demo fund, just has to go to that municipality and have them do a certification, check some boxes. It keeps the municipality in the know. It also does allow them to certify that there is a blight issue of some sort. So blight funding right now, I have about $150,000 to acquire and rehab. That's going to be made into a revolving loan. So that's started, so anyone can apply for that. Again, my goal is to always have my money keeping able to be reused. Sustainability is key. And then there's $68,000 right now in CDBG funding to acquire a blighted property. We are capped when it comes to CDBG, what you can use, how much you can use for blight. The Redevelopment Authority Land Bank just had their first meeting on March 10th, 2022. We are doing meetings quarterly. So we did approve those policies and procedures at that meeting. And so I'll be working on all the remaining documents that need to be done for the land bank. And our board meetings are on the following dates. So there's one in June, September, and December. They meet in our office at 1:14, but there's also a Zoom option. So I've been trying to take any board that involves property to both Zoom and in person. And then some future initiatives, just so you're in the know, we are getting a new website. A great deal of thank you to Rebecca and our new social media marketing coordinator for working on that project. So that should be launching. The hope is to make it more user friendly, particularly for our residents and for the populations we deal with here in the county. We're also expanding a senior housing tax credit project that we have here in the county. There's significant needs, so if I can expand one project, I will certainly do it. We're increasing some staffing just because there's huge need and demand, so we have to keep adding people. We have some upcoming tax credit projects here in the county that we are involved with in one way or the other. There is one out in Lemoyne, there is one out in Hampton Township, and one out in Shippensburg, and one here in the borough of, well, technically I believe it would be South Middleton Township. So those all received tax credits from PHFA. So you will be seeing more affordable housing in the next 2 years come online. We are also taking on a number of supportive service contracts for some of those projects. So, and our office offers supportive services. I am pursuing some EPA funding in conjunction with Kirkstoner and Kadick, just so that we can be prepared when some brownfields do open up here in the county. And Kirk's starting to find a few more recommendations, so hopefully we can continue to go after that funding. The county also was allocated this home ARP money. Basically, this funding is supposed to be used to develop transitional housing, let's say, for individuals out of homelessness. So we will be putting that plan together, and that money will start to, once we have to come up with a plan as a county, when we come up with that plan, we'll start looking at a partner to develop housing, but it's specifically related to homelessness and creating housing for homelessness. So that's a lot, and I know I was asked to, but I thought the big broad overview would be helpful, not just some of the small programs. So this, but I can answer any questions you may have and continue on.
Mary, the one blighted property that you mentioned, or 3 of them are, I guess, scheduled for demolition. Is one of those the building in Hoagstown?
So there was 2, Silver Spring submitted 2. There was one on 114.
On Hoagstown Road.
Yes, yes.
Hoagstown is-
There's one in Hoagstown itself that was submitted. And we put it through the process. The owner has actually now reached out to them, saying that he's interested in, working with the municipality. So
Okay.
what I've been doing is some owners have taken some incentive to then reach out. And it really is an extra tool to sort of spur them along if they haven't been doing it. So he has reached out. So we'll see some of the next steps at the next Blight board to see if he'll be willing to, hold true to that. There are going to be some demos in East Pennsboro. They're far beyond savings, so we're going to have to demolish. They're at that place. And then another gentleman in Silver Spring is reaching out to demolish his property. He bought a blighted property and cleaned it up. The blight designations for the owner to finally sell it to him. So he's going to be using some demolition funding to help take off some other parts of the property.
Thanks.
Roughly speaking, remind me, the transfer fee that was implemented is generating roughly what amount annually?
So the estimate annually was 250,000. So the estimate annually originally when you implemented it was about 250. If I think the first year it looked like it was roughly about, it was on track to be about 200,000, and it has now jumped up about 257,000. So a little bit well beyond expectation. But my goal is to get the money out as readily as possible. So I'm pushing. All right.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, next up, Mr. Fowler, Toby Fowler, this speak to us regarding ARPA money. Favorite topic.
Yeah. Well, I think you got, do you have a copy of the presentation?
Yeah.
Okay. The presentation is basically the results of the survey that was completed at the end of February. And copy, and I can start going through it. So we, just as a recap, we developed an online survey, used Microsoft Forms, it was posted online. It was advertised throughout the month of February. It was sent out to, through the press. It was advertised heavily on social media. It was sent out through a network of stakeholders and sent out through county employees who sent it out to stakeholders and entities that are working with some of the groups that potentially would benefit down the road from ARP. The survey was completed at the end of February. We got 2,152 surveys completed. If you look at the slide, get to it now. I guess I have control. This slide shows that majority of the people that responded to the survey were residents of the county. And then the rest of the categories are nonprofits that either are working in the county, people that are non-residents but employed in the county, local governments. There's a smaller number of businesses, although in the written comments, you'll see a lot of people responded in the written comments that they responded as a resident, but they also have a business in the county. So it's
But these are, they had to choose one.
they had to choose one, correct. So there, in terms of responses, we started off with some general questions, asking what people thought about the COVID-19 pandemic. And you can see more than 50% said it's a significant crisis. Another 40% or so said that it's a serious problem, but not a crisis. Not too many people believe that it, is not a problem. In terms of people that had experienced challenges during the pandemic, people could select more than one here, but it's about 10%. It comes out to about 10%, or just over 10% of respondents said they had problems paying their mortgage, had problems paying utilities, had challenges affording food, and had challenges paying for healthcare.
Does it surprise you that there's such a large number of folks who essentially said it had no impact on them?
No, not from my perspective, not really. We'll show you a graph a little bit later, and you'll see the income levels of the people that responded, and this corresponds closely to the
Okay.
income levels of the respondents.
So we have there's some uncertainty about the representativeness of the sample.
You'll see it when we look at the income levels.
Okay.
In general, this is about physical health, but you'll see physical health people said, majority of people said it stayed about the same. Some said it's gotten a little better. Some said it's gotten worse. The mental health area, though, and this lines up with a lot of the feedback that we've gotten through stakeholder groups. In the mental health area, 1,207 people said, or more than 50% said that their mental health has gotten worse as a result of the pandemic or since the pandemic, and that's a pretty substantial percentage. So, what do you believe the relative importance of telework is? Understandably, 75% or more of people identify that telework is more important now than prior to the pandemic. Probably wasn't an option for most people prior to the pandemic, and now it's an option, and it becomes really important. Social distancing, which I don't even know that I knew what that was before the pandemic, quite honestly, as a term. But a lot of people also believe it's more important now than prior to the pandemic.
Excuse me, on that page and the previous page, should that second bullet say less important?
It should say less important. I don't know how that got there, but it should say less important. Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry.
In terms of priority on goals, so the 3 goals that we outlined were part of the survey. So the red is for that item is the first choice. The gray said it was the second choice in the ranking. The blue was the third choice in the ranking. So you can see improve the physical and mental health of residents was selected as the most important goal by the majority of the people. Revitalizing communities in the county is probably the second most important goal. And then restoring and delivering government services would be the third most important goal. I kind of expected the government services one to be the third most. I didn't really know, how people would view physical and mental health versus revitalizing communities. But when you get into the individual goals, then you can look at the objectives that were established and how people rate the objectives. Stabilize and enhance mental health services in the county, got pretty high ratings on, overall within that mental health goal. Housing assistance and job training are probably, the next two in terms of importance. And then creating additional opportunities for individuals with mental illness to become incarcerated and assist people with mental health issues in prison, weren't as high of a priority for people. But people did recognize that, mental health has become a really important issue, and there's assistance needed from the COVID-19 pandemic. Goal 2 was revitalize Cumberland County communities negatively impacted by COVID-19. And you'll see in there, repairing local water and sewer infrastructure was probably the highest. Rated one, it's the second one from the bottom. Providing general workforce training also got, pretty high ratings, which one of the grants to one of the universities focused on workforce training. That was the one to Central Penn. And then the other categories, providing new affordable housing projects, funding existing public transportation service, and providing additional public transportation service were sort of equal. Construct new park and trail facilities sort of fell off. But in terms of how people rated things, but if you look at all the written comments that we received, and there's 800 to 1,000 of the people who responded provided written comments on a lot of people identified, building this trail here, building that connection there, adding pickleball courts, because they're waiting all the time to get pickleball courts. So I don't know if they connected all that together, but there's a lot of written comments that's geared around trails, park improvements, and pickleball courts in particular showed up. I didn't even know what pickleball was until people explained that to me too. But one thing I want to highlight, that construct new affordable housing in this objective 2 was listed under this goal to revitalize Cumberland County communities. And that's a little different than the provide housing assistance to people with mental health issues. Providing housing assistance to people with mental health issues got pretty good priority as well. So under goal 3, providing countywide grant opportunities to police, fire, and ambulance services to assist with the radio system got very high ratings. I don't know if it got networked out so that many of the people that need those things, made sure they got the survey filled out. But in some ways, that's a good thing that people identified things as a priority. But it did get identified as a high priority. Improving county buildings to enhance safety for residents, employees was probably the least rated on this category, which was the first one listed at the top. And then the providing grant opportunities for various items for businesses, for municipalities, and for nonprofits, sort of equal. And surprisingly, compared to the county buildings one, people did see benefit in upgrading county computers and software to support public access to information and telework services. So, which is part of the projects that were identified within the county network. So some of the other categories of, where we had written responses, people provided written responses. This is not statistically drawn from those lists. I read through the list and I picked out words or topics that I saw repeated over and over again to pull some highlights out. Parks and Rec, although seemed to be rated lower in that goal, was identified a lot in the written topics. People identified childcare assistance, homeless and housing assistance for the homeless, assisting the most vulnerable people or most vulnerable populations, including people with mental health issues, the elderly, and children. Road and bridge and other infrastructure. There was a whole series on infrastructure, things related to the airport, things related to water and sewer infrastructure, things related to specific road issues or bridge issues that people identified that need to be addressed. There was general assistance for first responders was identified. there were some people that were suggested multiple times that the county should, try to build a rainy day fund, whether you could use that money directly or not, but should have some kind of rainy day fund. So if there is another pandemic kind of issue, that the county has some resources to address it. Broadband internet was identified by some, and then small business assistance was also identified by some as being needed. So in terms of the profile of individuals that completed the survey, this one's on race and ethnicity, but majority respondents were white. And then you can see the other race and ethnicity categories, pretty low responses in the other categories. And then there's 216 people that said they preferred not to answer. Gender responses was more heavily weighted toward females than men. So I'd say more than half were female. And then there was a group that preferred not to answer. In terms of household income, this is what I was, the profile of the respondents. And this is one of the challenges with doing online surveys. Almost all online surveys that I've seen done in the county here, and you end up with very similar profile. Although this one does have more respondents, I think, in the lower income categories than the Climate Action Plan survey that was done. Climate Action Plan survey, I think, had more overall responses, but it was even more heavily weighted toward higher income groups. But you can see the over 100,000 club was roughly 650 of the respondents. But there is pretty substantial response for some people or groups in lower household income categories. I didn't run the crosstabs, but my guess is if you crosstab this with some of the earlier responses, that it would correlate pretty closely. People having trouble paying for food, people having trouble paying for utilities and things like that probably correspond pretty closely to some of the people in the lower income categories. In terms of highest level of education by respondents, the gray bar is master's degree. That purplish bar is was somebody with a bachelor's degree, and then you'll see the brown bar to the left of that is associate's degree. The red bar 2 over was some college and no degree, and then the green bar was high school graduate, high school education or GED. So my guess is, again, if we crosstab that, you'll probably see a correlation between that and income levels as well. It won't match up perfectly, but it's probably pretty similar. Well, that's a basic summary of the survey. Any questions or any additional analysis you'd like to see on the survey? My intent is to use the survey results. I'm in the process now of working with some of the subject matter experts in the county to develop these proposed grant programs that then we bring in front of you to look at, that's keyed off of the goals and objectives. But when we bring those programs back, I want to also be able to show you how that, it connects back to the survey results so that you can see where the support was for it.
Can we get copies of the written comment?
Absolutely. Yep. No problem. I have it in Excel, so I can send that in. Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Good info, thank you.
So when's the next we will hear from you? Roughly speaking.
Probably not next week, but I would say maybe in 2 weeks.
Oh, okay.
We ought to come back and start talking about draft programs. I want to get that stuff moving pretty quickly.
Well, I think we'll have a better idea on Monday.
Yeah.
Like once we have our big meeting on Monday, we'll know.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Look forward to that.
Do we have a rough idea when the actual application will be available?
Well, I want to get the programs, I want to get programs drafted and get them in front of you.
Okay.
Once they're approved,
Fine.
then we'll get to advertise them, so.
That makes sense. I just
Yeah.
wanted to get this.
We were actually just talking before the
Yeah.
meeting that one of the things that we do have in our arsenal, and actually, Adam happens to be here today. He was instrumental in developing it. We have the application kind of infrastructure in place, because we should really be able to utilize a big part of the CARES
Right.
Act application.
Oh, yeah.
And so that should really make it much easier
Yeah.
to hit the ground running.
So we are anticipating a single application.
I think, I'm thinking that we're gonna end up with applications that are focused on some of the different goals, so. I was kind of thinking that you might have a goal, you might have an application geared around physical and mental health. You might have an application geared around the second goal, which was revitalizing communities. And then something that would be more general, that would be broader grant opportunities for other people.
So I think
I like that.
the core of the application might be the same, and
Yes.
there might be some
Priorities.
specialized sections added on for
Right.
each different goal.
Sort of priorities geared around the objectives and then reporting requirements.
Since, just asking this off the top of my head, since the survey itself is not it's interesting.
Yeah.
It has value, but empirically, as a research instrument, it is not truly a needs assessment.
It's not statistically significant or anything like that, but it's an indicator of.
So is there any thought to, with the application, backstop some of the needs assessment roles, such as requiring a justification?
From the way I read the guidelines, you're supposed to have a public involvement process.
Yeah.
And this survey is one of the tools we're using for a public involvement process. So it was an opportunity for the public to weigh in and provide input. Not necessarily to have to be used to guide, statistically guide how you make decisions. I don't think there's no guidance that requires that. But I think it would, especially at the time when we developed the survey, we're thinking about doing the survey. We were thinking it would really be hard with the mask mandates and all the social distancing requirements to try to hold any kind of public meetings. And I think you'd get very low turnout. So thought maybe this might be a really good way to get the word out about what the county's thinking and try to get feedback.
Sure, I'll have more questions on that going forward. It's helpful, thank you. Okay, anything,
Can I ask a couple of questions?
well, our public comment period was up front, where it normally is.
Sorry.
I'll grant you a few minutes to ask some questions, sure.
Okay, thank you. On the survey, was there a question about Claremont at all?
No.
No, okay. And some of the American Recovery Act money could be used toward anything that Claremont needed.
I would say that if it fit within the needs that and the guidelines that falls under ARP, possibly.
Yeah.
Depending on what the needs were.
Well, yeah, like a grant and I noticed you had elderly up there at one point. Yeah. Okay. That I happen to be president of Friends of Claremont. I'm Dr. Barbara Forney. And so I was, of course, interested in that.
Sure.
And I have another question. What was the sale deposit for Claremont? Was it 19.9 million?
I'm not sure I understand the question, but that was.
I'm not sure I understand the question either.
Well, I thought that the sale for Claremont was 22 plus million.
22.25 million, correct?
Okay,
Correct.
and so I'm wondering what the deposit ended up being, final deposit.
You mean the net proceeds? We don't know that number yet.
Excuse me?
Net proceeds, I think is
Yeah.
what you're, we don't know that number.
You don't have it yet.
No, we won't for probably several months.
Okay.
Please
Well,
correct
of
me
course,
if I'm wrong.
I'm a registered Republican. And I'm very interested in continuing to help the residents of Cumberland County to be able to have a good living end. My mother-in-law was a resident there for 3 years. My mother was a resident elsewhere, but we won't talk about that. And I would like to see some monies that could continue to help the residents of the county. I have written a number of letters to the editor to that effect. I don't know if you've seen them, but they were in the Patriot.
Hey, do you have any additional questions?
That's it. Thank you. Thank you for allowing me.
Okay, so we're done with the ARPA topic then. Okay, thanks for the presentation. Good information to factor in, so. So we'll go to item 5, which is other business. Do we have other topics or other things to be addressed by anybody? Okay, I don't hear any. So at this point, I'll entertain the motion for adjournment.
Move to adjourn.